to Base Camp Beta.
Hold on. Eager Shawn over here. All right, now we're ready.
Welcome to Base Camp Beta, episode 112.
112.
One of these days, I'll get it like unhesitatingly right, or you will. You actually get it right more than I do. I'm always kind of guessing.
Yeah, but sometimes we switch the order, around of things. So sometimes baking in the number is not always foolproof.
That's true. There was at least one instance.
Things around. Yeah.
So for this week, we have no guest. It's just the boys back in town.
Just the boys.
So we're gonna do a little synthesizer special. Yeah,
we're gonna do a little synthesizer special. We're gonna talk about the Roland SH-101.
Yeah.
This is an entire episode dedicated to the Roland SH-101. Before we get started, make sure to check out the Patreon, Basecamp Beta, patreon.com/Basecamp Beta. We're gonna experiment a little bit with this episode. We're going to talk for a while, and then we also have plans to talk later in the episode about some other important pieces of gear to both Shawn and I individually. Pieces of gear that aren't the SH-101. And if you want to check that out, we will put that second part of this episode up as a Patreon exclusive.
That's right. We are pay gating for the first time.
We are. Well, I mean, the other Patreon episodes have been pay. Is that different if we do this as a two-parter? And
it feels different. Yes, we're in the era of ethical podcasting. So.
Ethical podcasting, yeah. Anyway, so check out the Patreon, patreon.com/Basecamp Beta for the second part of this episode and some other back catalog episodes. And we're actually keeping to the Patreon this time, which is good.
Yeah, we've been knocking out of the park. Yeah,
we've actually been providing Patreon exclusives.
Yeah, and some of those exclusives are pretty spicy, I might say.
Yeah, they've been really fun so far. So check it out.
Yeah, so let's talk about the SH-101.
Before we get started, I want to get an important piece of housekeeping out of the way.
Okay.
I'm doing a new podcasting technique. I'm holding the microphone rather than putting it on a mic stand. How do we feel about this? Is this good?
Who's we?
You. Our this is a question also to our listeners. Please send me DMs on Instagram. Let me know if this is causing any sort of problems. I feel a little more free to gesticulate while I'm podcasting. That I'm holding the microphone, it feels like a little more of a performance rather than a sort of, the canonical now image of a podcaster being in a studio with a Shure SM7 and and the cans on. I'm also wearing AirPods now, as you can see.
I noticed.
Because it's hot as shit out, and I figured that would be a better way to get through this episode than wearing my chunky Sennheiser HD 25s. So
I dread when it gets hot enough in here in New York that I'm going to have to like podcast without the AC on.
Yeah.
When the AC has to be run 24/7. We'll see how that goes.
Yeah. Maybe book some time at the podcasting studio. Do they have a quiet AC over there?
I mean, I've only been over to Public Sound once, and it was not warm enough to have to deal with the AC. I assume it's like it's like an officey. It's an officey building with like other establishments. It's definitely quieter than my like 11-year-old window unit.
Those window units, goddamn. Okay,
so I'm all for the handheld.
Thank you.
Sounds good to me. I feel like the room verb might be a little reduced with it, so that's good.
Well, I'm moving by next episode anyway, so
that's right.
So you'll hear me in a different space, listener.
I look forward to seeing it and hearing it. So yeah, for myself, like the first track that comes to mind when I think of, so the 101 appears on like countless tracks, basically like anything with the synthesizer made from the year 1982 until 96, 7, 8. There's a decent chance there could be a 101 on there, and you might not know.
Yeah, probably.
It was one of Roland's like lower end budgety synths, but just fit in so many studios and so many different contexts. So huge part in dance music, huge part in new wave and synth pop and jazz and all sorts of things. So the tracks that I think we should focus on are ones that have like a kind of uniquely 101 signature.
Yeah.
And for me, the first track that comes to mind is Ace and the Sandman, Let Your Body Talk. Chicago house track from 92, I believe. Is that right?
I don't know offhand, but it would be that era. I mean, that sounds right.
Yeah. So it's 92 on Saber Records, the amazing, slightly off the beaten path Chicago house label. Like Saber's kind of known for like the like most weird, unhinged side of Chicago. Maybe not the most, but it's in that direction, right? Like that's where you get like, I think the first DJ Rush record is on Saber. So Saber can lean into that like wonky jack style of Chicago. The Ace and the Sandman track is wonky, but it's also like has a lot of like classic early 90s deep house signatures. Like it's only a step removed from something that might have been on New Groove, but what really stands out in the track, other than the great subdued vocals and some super deep pads, is this like pretty wild freak out bass line that kind of runs through the whole thing, and they're just tweaking the knobs. It has a characteristic that is completely unlike like classic Chicago acid driven by the TB-303.
Yeah, totally.
So like there's a very different. There's a different set of tweakable parameters.
Would you call it slinky?
I wouldn't necessarily reach for that word myself immediately, but I would not object to someone calling it slinky.
It's a little too like Chicago fried to be slinky. Like slinky's like a little, I would think maybe my head goes a little more towards like your more refined 2000s aesthetics, but it still feels a bit slinky. It's funny that you say that Saber was like the outlet for the kind of wonkier Chicago stuff, because this feels, I mean, Ace and the Sandman were Virgo 4, who that's probably the best known iteration of the two of them. And, that Virgo 4 did a handful of really classic records on tracks. Very classic Chicago house stuff, and this is
could certainly describe those Virgo 4 bass lines as slinky. Yeah.
Well, but then also like those tracks themselves were not this kind of like 101 workout. Like those are more in like those were like incredible classic Chicago house tracks, whereas that you would have heard like potentially on the radio and stuff. Whereas this is definitely like you're kind of like Larry Heard, Gherkin Jerks, kind of like little like freak out Chicago stuff.
Yeah, totally. It is unique because it has both of those sides to it in like prominently. Like it has the we're just tweaking the knobs with the like classic deep house vibes.
Yeah, it has these beautiful chords in the back, and like you said, the vocals and stuff.
It's a Chicago house masterpiece, I think. But also like when I think of a 101, when I think of just like the 101 in like kind of pure form, this is one of the first things that springs to mind, because they're really working those parameters. They're tweaking, like the 303 has really two tweakable parameters if you're doing like an acid style.
I mean, it's tweaking the tuning knob is for the freaks. Is for the freaks. But yeah, I mean, it's really only got 4. The filter, frequency, resonance, the envelope, and the decay. Those are really the only ones that you focus on with the 303.
Right. and you're like, you're not likely really like doing more than like one or two of those throughout a track. Like there are plenty of like some of the greatest acid tracks of all time are just tweaking the filter. Yeah. Like nothing else is even touched.
Yeah.
The 101 has, it has the 4-stage envelope and then the amount of the envelope that goes to the filter, as well as the filter. And then you have the faders for the different oscillator waveforms in the sub oscillator.
So why don't we take this moment to like run through, like the kind of architecture of the 101.
Yeah. So it's the most, on one hand, it's the most vanilla, like basic monosynth that exists. Yeah. It's nearly platonic.
It's a single oscillator, which is important.
Yes. But I was going to say, on the other hand, there are a few slightly odd things about the 101 that give it a very strong, a strong thumbprint, and also just like interesting sonic possibilities. But yeah, so the basic architecture, single oscillator, one filter, 4-pole, 24 dB.
Yep.
Available waveforms, just saw,
square and saw, and then it also has the sub oscillator with a switch, so that the sub oscillator can be 1 octave down or 2 octave downs, and then there's another setting to change the pulse width of one of the octave settings.
Yeah. So you do have pulse width control over the pulse wave, and then the sub oscillator can be also pulse wave modulated, but also can be not. Filter just has frequency and resonance, and then the envelope. The envelope has control over how much of the envelope is modulating the filter. The other important thing about the 101, was there something else you wanted to say about the architecture?
And then you also have the other filter controls, the keyboard tracking,
yes,
which is always quite key, especially given you have transpose possibilities of the SH-101 has a 32 key keyboard, which is basically 2.5 octaves, which is quite reduced, but for your general kind of like baseline kind of leads and things like that is totally fine. But the transpose switch allows you to go down and up quite a bit, and that big range, the keyboard tracking that goes to the filter, tracks that whole range of the keyboard, so that when you play higher notes, the filter is more open. When you play lower notes, the filter is more closed. And that, especially once you have some groove going on the 101, that keyboard tracking control, in my experience, really adds a lot of expressiveness, and is like just as much a tweakable parameter as then the third modulation to the filter, which is from the LFO.
Yes.
But so kind of all these three modulation sources to the filter really kind of get the 101 in this very expressive zone as it's doing its thing.
Yeah, it has a lot more like easily accessible animation than the 303.
Yeah.
And so the LFO, of course, also just has to what are the waveforms? Let me even look. It's just square.
We both have 101s here, so we can always double check our work.
Square, ramp, sine, and then importantly noise.
Wait, it's just a random, right?
Oh yeah, there is random. There's sample and hold, but there is noise on the LFO. That's for me. That's like a huge that feature is a huge part of using the 101 as a kind of percussive instrument, because using noise as an LFO source on the filter gets you, and especially if you have noise running into the filter as well, then you get really like crunchy sounds. And I think that's one of the most like kind of like understatedly signature sounds that the 101 has, is this like particularly like fried, crunchy, just a different kind of like crunchy noise that you don't normally get without like other processing, basically.
You can also, because of that, you can also send the noise to modulate the oscillator frequency.
Yes.
Which for me, it's like such a classic move to like, I don't know, add a lot just with a little bit, it adds so much to a sound. For some reason, I always associate it with Sakamoto, and I don't really know why. Nothing's coming to head nothing's coming to mind as to why I would do that, but for whatever reason, I associate that with Sakamoto. I don't know, but it's like just adding a little noise modulation to your oscillator is like it just adds a lot of depth to a sound.
Yeah, it can make a kind of like boring vanilla, like filtered sawtooth sound like much more natural.
Mm-hmm.
I can see why you would on just kind of like an emotional level associate that with Sakamoto.
Yeah, it just feels right, and I don't know why, but it feels right.
You sold me on that totally. Like yes.
Yeah, to get a little nerdy, so the oscillator on the 101, like we said, it's one oscillator, which is quite unusual. I mean, if you compare it to like, so the SH-101 is kind of like this canonical monosynth that only plays one note at a time, and it's a very simple, straightforward architecture, like Shawn described. It has a more or less similar architecture to something like the Mini Moog, but the Mini Moog had 3 oscillators, whereas the 101 has a single.
Yeah.
And the amount of oscillators.
The architecture is also. I mean, the architecture is also very.
It's very
different.
different. Yes, yeah. It's very different. But in general, like the sound path, you have an oscillator, you have a filter, you have a VCA controlled by an envelope.
Yeah. Totally standard vanilla. Like this is a monosynth. It plays one note. You have a filter. You have some waveforms. Boom.
Yeah, totally. And but on something like the Mini Moog, or even on the earlier Roland monosynths, the SH-1, the SH-9, things like that, the SH-2, you would have had 2 oscillators, and having those 2 oscillators and detuning them gives you a lot of gives a lot of richness to a sound. Yeah. It gives this kind of, I don't know, this it creates a sound that's much bigger. The sound of one oscillator.
I mean, that's how you get a fat bass line. Is you take two square waves, you detune them a little bit, and suddenly you're in a world of like wah wah wah.
That's how you get your like typical fat bass line. And on the Mini Moog, you have 3 oscillators, and that was always kind of like, But the SH-101 came out in 1982. And it was Roland's kind of like attempt to make a really, really cheap synthesizer. The SH-101 is plastic. And somehow they've all, I don't know, mine is in great shape. I don't really know how. Shawn, I assume.
They're
built like a tank, and I don't know how.
Yeah, no, it's bizarre. I've had the big tech thing with 101s that has to go, that forces them to go into repair. Is the power supply is very close to you'll have a better technical insight for me here than me here, but the power supply's proximity to the oscillator tuning means that like the power button can if it gets a little weird, it can lend very like unstable tuning.
Yeah, that happened to mine when I bought mine, which I will say I got mine at Control. I had just put out a kind of employee-wide thing, like, hey, someone, because at Control we consigned a lot of gear. And I was like, hey, if someone comes in with a 101, let me know before it goes out.
I remember when you got it, yeah.
Yeah, and I did take advantage of that. But so the one that the guy brought in was in great shape. It just had that power button issue, which is so typical. And it's basically like the power button's a simple little button right on the front. Yeah. But it's just like if you wiggle the power button itself, then like the oscillator tuning will be all fucked up. And that's a pretty easy and standard fix, but that's one of the classic ones. But I mean, somehow, even though it's in a plastic case, but I mean, my biggest thing with the 101 was when I moved here to Spain, I brought mine, and I think no piece of gear gave me as much anxiety because of the fucking bender. The little plasticky pitch bender that sticks up. It's just asking to be... It's
snapped
like
off.
It's asking to be snapped off. And whereas the rest of it is these nice flush faders, and everything else of it is, even though it's in plastic, feels like you can wrap it really well in bubble wrap and it should be totally fine.
Yeah.
The fucking bender gave me I honestly had like a handful of nightmares. Moving across the ocean with like a studio is anxiety provoking enough. But the 101 was, I would say, a major source of the anxiety that I had when I moved.
I mean, I have traveled the world over with 101s, and I mean, yeah, they've gotten fucked up a few times, but not really.
I never brought one to a gig. I'd always, whenever I played live, I always asked people to get me a 101, and that never failed. So, but yeah.
I mean, in Euro techno land, 101s are a decent venue is always going to be able to get you a 101. But
yeah.
But that's also from another decade.
So. Yeah, totally. But back to the oscillator. So, the fact that the 101 only has a single oscillator should give it a pretty dinky sound. And it can have a pretty dinky sound, which is kind of part of its charm. But, also there are some tricks modulating the pulse width of the square wave that can give it a bit more fatness, but also it just sounds fucking great.
Yeah, the sub oscillator, of course, like if you want some heft, weight. The sub oscillator, and then one of the other big tricks for getting like heavy sub bass out of it, which I want to maybe address in fuller context later, because it's something that to my recollection at least, a lot of the UK bleep early bleep artists would do this to get a fat sub bass. You just use the filter self oscillating, and it just sounds really good. I mean, I would say like one of the 101's the secret sauce of the 101 is, at its core, it's really hard to make it sound bad. There's no like it's basically all sweet spot. And
I don't know if that was a design decision on Roland's part, because it was kind of designed, as we're saying, as like the kind of cheaper version of earlier synths that had a bit more going on. But like, I have to believe that some of that design decision to make like a simpler, more reduced instrument also was like, it has to all sound good and be reined in.
Yeah, no,
it basically never sounds bad.
Like contrast even with like, I know this is no shade to these synths, because they're monsters in their own rights, but contrast with like the budget Moog synths from the same time, like the MG1 or the Moog Rogue, like they can sound pretty bad.
Yeah, totally.
Like, I mean, you can get like really dud spots with them, and with the 101 somehow just like it's basically all sweet spot. And there's really only like 4 or 5 different types of sounds you can make with it, but that's also fine, because that's all you want to make with it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a monosynth with lots of limitations. The modulation is really just kind of what's there on the panel. Yeah. It's just kind of from that LFO and that one envelope, and there's not too much crazy shit you can do with it. But then all the limitations, I mean, a synth having only sweet spot is because there's a lot of limitations baked into it.
Totally.
But working within those limitations, because it sounds so good, it just works. So the oscillator is a Curtis chip oscillator, the CEM 3340, which is the same oscillator chip that you find in like the Prophet 5, the OBXA, the OB8. Is it in the Pro 1? I actually don't know. It would make sense because the Pro 1 is kind of sequentials.
I think all the sequential stuff uses those chips. I think,
yeah. So I mean, basic off the shelf oscillator chip, then that's going to be responsible for the precise shape of the saw and the square, which does. These things aren't mathematically perfect. They have, and they definitely have a distinct tone. And that's kind of
the filter. You probably know more about like the intricacies of the filter than I do.
I do want to talk about the filter, but I will talk about the filter now by introducing my first pick.
So let me just say with the Ace of the Sandman track, just to put a bow on that, like the ways in which the bass line is tweaked in that are distinctly 101-esque, which like very much sets it apart from your standard kind of like Chicago 303 freak out. Totally. The other thing is the presence of the sub oscillator in multiple different waveforms present at once in the bass line is another big 101 thumbprint. But let's keep marching on. We got a lot to cover. We didn't even get to the sequencer yet, so
that's another thing that I wanna cover. I think with this track, which is probably like a boring pick and a bit of a totally canonical one, but it would be Aphex Twin's "The." Aphex Twin is someone who I'm not the biggest fan of, I will say.
It's kind of the same for me. Like he was in the 90s, he was like, by the time I got into electronic music, he was already like godlike, like this godlike figure. And my friends who were into him were mostly excited by like the RDJ album.
The drill and bass kind of stuff.
And the drill and bassy stuff.
Yeah.
Which like I was into breakcore, which was the much cooler version of that stuff. So I was like, So it was like, it was a fair bit later. Like, I mean, not that late, probably like 98, 99, 2000 that I listened to the earlier Aphex stuff, which I do think like Aphex's status. I agree. Like he's not like my favorite, but I can't argue with his status. He single-handedly invented like 3 or 4 genres basically. So.
Yeah, I mean he did a lot of shit, and like this is off probably his best known album, which is Selected Ambient Works, 85 to 92. Is that what that one's called?
It sounds about right.
It's not like my favorite album, and in fact, like this is the only track that I really love off that album. But I think like Aphex Twin has like a couple of transcendent tracks. Blue Calx is one of them. And then this is another. And the thing with "The" is it is the sound of the SH-101. And it's run through an Alesis quadriverb, but it's still the sound of the 101 in its very, very pure form. That bass lead line, I think, incredibly encapsulates the sort of chameleon-like nature of the 101 in its ability to move from a bass line to a kind of lead, and to kind of straddle those two things within a single like patch, a single setting, a single part is like can morph between those two things in a very, very beautiful way. And the other thing is, I think the sound of the filter, like the signature sound of the 101, I think comes across beautifully in "The" because it's so focused on that that 101 line, and it just to me sounds unmistakably like the 101. I mean, I guess he could have used an MC202, but I'm pretty sure it was a 101. I mean, it's worth noting that the MC202 is the same exact synthesizer circuitry as the 101. It's just the sequencer's different. But yeah, I mean, it's just like this pure 101. I don't know. It's just a gorgeous track. So the filter of the 101 is the what's the number? The Roland IR3109 chip. Roland, before, I think this was this the first one with that chip? Because before, in like the late 70s, Roland was doing a bunch of filter designs, a lot of them kind of Moog transistor ladder-ish based.
Yeah, I mean the SH the SH1, SH9, and the System 100 all have a different filter, but the 101 filter is the same one as the Junos. Is that right?
It's the same one that's in all the Junos, except for the 106. The 106 has a very, very similar. I think they just refined it, but it's not the exact same chip, but it's more or less the same thing because the sound of the Juno 106 is more or less the same as the other Junos. But it's also importantly the same filter that's in the Jupiter 8. It's the same filter that's in the JX3P. The Juno is more or less a polyphonic SH-101. I mean, if you want to get down to it, and the way that the Juno gets around the one oscillator limitation is by it having the chorus on it.
Yes,
famously, which does make all the difference. But yeah, I mean, that filter chip is kind of like the signature sound, and a really signature Roland sound. I mean, the 303 filter obviously is a different Roland signature sound. That's a totally discrete filter. It's not using a chip. It's just using
the 303 filter is the 303 filter the same one as the System 100? Is that right?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I believe the 303 filter is totally
its own
its own beast, which is funny because it's like the legend of the 303 is that it was this kind of like, oh, we're just going to make this like bass guitar accompaniment thing.
Right.
And it's like, they did that, but for some reason it has its own like really special filter in it. And, which, is why everyone loves that instrument. But, with the 101, it's kind of the same, even though it's the same filter that's in a lot of other Roland classics. That is kind of part of its charm because it just sounds so Roland-y. It's just like there's this unmistakably Roland sound to that filter.
I was going to say
filter sweeps, the way that the resonance works.
Yeah, I was going to say like the Juno, like a Juno 60 bass line can be more or less indistinguishable from a 101 bass line. Like,
if you turn the chorus on.
Exactly. Like, and that's how like, oh, Larry Heard was using a Juno on this one and not the 101 because it's got.
I was literally like thinking about, I was like, oh, like for this, we're talking about 101 tracks. I was thinking about Mr. Fingers tracks, but I was like, well, famously, Can You Feel is a Juno 60 because the chorus is on, but it's like, I think all these other ones might be Juno too, but I don't know. But then it doesn't matter,
Yeah. So I mean, that is a very important point that like the 101 and the Juno 60 are like nearly identical synths, other than a handful of things that make them very different.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
But that also points to the general like difficulty in synth identification.
Yeah, totally. I mean, the other thing that I love about Tha, and which is just such a funny track title to say, I'm realizing.
I understood it as Ta, like Konakal, like in Hindustani or Carnatic music.
Oh, okay.
As a the syllables that correspond to percussive strokes. Like dinana.
That, I mean, maybe. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know anything about it one way or the other. I'm going to keep saying Tha, but you're probably right.
You do you. I don't think I mean maybe some Richard D. James cop is going to come after you, but
well, maybe a Richard D. James super fan can let us know by Instagram DMs. I don't know why I'm saying everyone should DM us, but sure, let's do that.
Do not DM us, please.
So the other thing I really love about it is the sequence. And that brings us to the kind of like everything we're talking about is crucial reasons why we love the 101. But the other side of why we love the 101, at least I'll speak for myself, but why I love the 101 and why it just is that fucking synthesizer is because of its sequencer.
Absolutely.
The sequencer is just dead simple, easy to play, and it's so dead easy and simple to play that you often come up with weird shit that you didn't mean to come up with because of how simple it is. So basically, like, and I don't know how Richard D. James did this track. I would guess, given the lore, I would guess that he was actually using some kind of like Amiga, like programming programming notes on like a computer and then converting it to CV. Potentially. I mean, I don't know.
I doubt it.
The typical way that you would use the 101 is it has an external clock in. So you would connect it with a drum machine, with an 808 or a 909. And those 808s or 909, you'd program your bass drum, your snare, your clap, your whatever. And then on, say, the rim shot on the 909, that rhythm would go into the SH-101 and trigger the SH-101 to make a note. And then, so for the sequencer, all you need to do is press load and then just play notes. And every note you play is going to get stored into memory. You play a C2, G sharp 3, like whatever. Every next note you play, and then you hit load again, and whatever You played 13 notes, those are your 13 notes. And then when you hit play, every time, in this case, a rim shot is programmed on your 909, the SH-101 is going to play the next note in that sequence. And this is so dead easy to program. I mean, it's the great thing about the 101 is it's just like, you know that you don't have to think that hard about it, because when you're in the state of making music, it's really, really easy. And especially for a genre like techno, you can just punch in a bunch of notes that kind of go together, and then on your drum machine be plugging in rhythms that are like pushing it, and you're basically decoupling the melodic programming from the rhythmic programming. And that gets you into a really interesting place, because you have, let's say you punched in 13 notes. Okay, well, that's not, if you have 13 rim shots in your in your 4/4/16 pattern, then that works out. But if you have one more or less or anything else, then the melody is going to keep wrapping around, and it's never going to finish. It's going to always kind of like be in this polymetric relationship to whatever the drum machine is, and that is really great.
Eventually, it will cycle back around to the initial, but
yeah. But that's one of its, So like for me, I would always with my 101 put in like 5 or 7 notes, and then just like program something on the drum machine, and then sometimes you just like keep messing with the rhythm until the note sequence
until it all comes together.
Until it all comes together, and you're like, okay, that's cool. And that's like a really simple and primitive way of like making music, and especially in a genre like techno, it's just like so simple and satisfying and like fun. Honestly, it's just really, really fun.
I mean, you can think of it basically as a way to generate complexity for free. Like you can get like, given the amount of like effort you have to put forth, both sort of like conceptually, compositionally, and also just raw physical, like haptic effort, somatic effort. It's really just a couple buttons, and you have this like fairly complex, like alive, pseudo generative sequence.
Totally.
And also because of this, like the 101 is particularly great as a live performance.
Yeah, I mean that's the other thing is, so to share a bit of like my first encounters with the 101, I may have had encounters before this, but really it was with my bandmate Tin Man and our group Romans, and we were just jamming in the studio, in a friend's studio, and there was a 101, and so I was just like, okay, fuck it, I'm gonna use the 101, and I was still pretty green, I didn't know too much, I didn't have too much gear at the time, and I didn't have too much experience with gear, so I generally knew what stuff did, but I didn't, still kind of like a bit alien to me looking at this thing, and so we jammed a bunch of stuff, and a lot of that stuff came out on our first album, which is a lot of just like me like in real time like learning the 101, and it just being so easy in that studio context to like jam in, and just like I learned just in like those few hours, just like, oh, okay, you just like punch in some notes and then like change the rhythm on the drum machine and like turn up the volume and here's something, and then and then the parameter and then the sound controls are more, as you alluded to, they're a lot deeper than the 303, but there's still like a handful of controls that you want to tweak, in this thing, a handful of filter controls that will get you like, okay, this is something that I can rock with, so just knowing that, it became such a staple for me as a live performer, because then my solo live sets, I quickly learned how awesome and easy the 101 was, and especially I think I was still on my rider for live performances asking for a 101 before I ever owned one, because I just knew it well enough and knew how much I liked it and I just knew how to perform with it, that I knew that like, okay, 101 comes up, it's this blank slate, you don't need anything, they're all the same and they all work exactly the same way, and they're so easy to improvise on and to play in a live setting.
I mean, so that brings me to something else that I want to get to. Is there anything else you want to like touch on with Ta?
Oh, I mean, I guess I was talking about the sequencer and like the kind of complexity you get from it. That melodic sequence in does just kind of, it does resolve in a very like kind of like sensible and logical way. So I do think that it's very possible that he like wrote that out and kind of meant it to be that way, but it still kind of, to me, just has the hallmarks of the kind of sequence that you just kind of happen upon when you're playing the 101. Shit that you didn't really mean. You put in some notes, you kind of generally know that these are notes that work well together, and you program a rhythm, but then some sequence in combination with whatever else is going on appears, and it's just like this kind of like magic. And you know, whether he actually like sat down and wrote it and was like, okay, this is how the sequence is going to go, I can kind of hear it in my head, or he did what we're talking about. It is kind of indicative of the kind of sequence that comes up when you're playing a 101.
Totally. I mean, like, it's easy to imagine a world in which he like came up with the sequence that way and then developed it further elsewhere.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, with Aphex, the Aphex 101 song that always comes to mind for me is Polynomial C, but that's, you know,
right.
That's so boring. We don't need to talk about it. Great song, but yeah. But on the topic of the 101 live, like, so the 101 was the second or third synth that I got, like proper synth that I had after my Juno 106. And like, I might have had something else in there, but the 101 was like just absolutely foundational to all of my early live sets, totally foundational to the sound of Letter S. And the 101 was just a real staple at the Weird Party in general. Like, you know, maybe not most, but a whole lot of the, you know, acts in the Weird Party orbit had a 101 somewhere on stage. And I want to discuss Sean McBride, Marshall Cantarella, and Zion Oaklander. Huge influence in my musical life. A dear friend. Someone we should at some point have on the podcast for sure.
Yeah.
But
we should have Aphex Twin on the podcast too.
Yeah. well, we already had Altecker on, so
that's true.
It's hard to find clear instances of the 101 in Shawn's early music. I did pull up Zion Oaklander's Saracen, which I think is worth listening to. Great song. Really indicative of like the sound of the Weird Party in its kind of first incarnation before things kind of like started, before the cold wave revival really happened.
Right.
The Weird Party was doing this kind of stuff. And so the very first Zion Oaklander self-released album, Vigils, as a version of Non Senti. Non Senti is the one, not Saracen. But the early version of Non Senti, I think that's a 101. There's a chance it's a System 100, because that was also like a big part of Shawn's sound in that era. But I did want to touch on how Shawn used to use a 101 actually just as a controller. And there was a long period where he was using two 101s on stage, but just as controllers, just as arpeggiators and keyboard controllers. Because, as we've discussed many times in passing on this podcast, before like things like the Roland Beat Step Pro 2, the Beat Step Pro, like it was really hard to find sequencers and keyboard controllers that could do CV and were like decently built and not a gazillion dollars, or like involving like, you know, multiple MIDI CV converters and, you know, a whole bunch of crap. So Shawn, like a big part of Shawn's sound was using the 101 built-in sequencer, plus, you know, like, so the one thing we did discuss, at least we touched on this, but the sequencer, you know, this basic 64 note sequencer as Chris outlined, but you can also transpose the sequence.
Yes, it's up to 99 notes. It stores up to 99.
Oh, is it 9? Okay. Sorry.
Because
like
it's not on the grid or anything, you know. So it just kind of stores this free X number up to 99 notes.
Well, you can add rests too, of course, but
yes, yeah. Some of those notes can be rests or holds, but it's up to 99 that it stores.
I might have been confusing it with the CSQ. The CSQ 600 might have been 64, which was another big part of the early Weird Records scene. Because again, like, you know, there was no way to there were like the sequencing options available for analog synths were really bad. So
yeah, seriously.
A lot of us used the CSQ 600 was the one that had four banks of 64. If I could be remembering wrong. I sold mine a very long time ago, once like normal decent sequencers were available. But yeah, so Non-Senti from Sarah Center Vigils, whatever, from their first the first version of Non-Senti that Zeno and Oaklander did, sounds very much like an SH-101 bass line to me. Also because it just has the classic sound of the 101 sample and hold on the like sample and hold filter on the sample and hold on the filter. And every time a new note or step is generated, you get a new filter parameter, and that's, you know, there are plenty of synths in the world that do that, but there's something about the way the 101 does it that just always totally. it always pops out.
Yeah, for sure. On Sean McBride, for some reason, I have in mind that he had like 4 SH-101s at some point. Is that right? I don't know why this is in my head. I have some. I feel like something like that. I don't know why, but
he may have owned upwards of 3 or 4 for sure.
Yeah.
I know, like he definitely performed with 2 himself on stage, and it's possible Liz would use one as well. Can't you know, Zeno and Oaklander have gone through so many different gear incarnations. Shawn is one of like the deepest gearheads out there. So, but yeah, 101. Like again, this is like one of the point outs Non-Senti as like a probably 101, but also really capturing the sound of the early Weird Party. But also I wanted there to highlight like the 101's like usefulness as an instrument extended considerably beyond just using the sounds that it could make. Like it was actually like the sequencer and physical architecture of it in and of itself are like pretty great.
Totally. And that's kind of why, I mean, I mentioned earlier the MC202, which is a very similar look to the 101. It's a good deal smaller, but it doesn't have a keyboard, but it does have this like this sequencer built into it. And though the sonic architecture is exactly the same, it's a much
sequencer's way different. Yeah.
A sequencer's made different, and it's a much less desirable synth because the sequencer's annoying. People have mods for it and all that kind of thing. But in general, it's just like the reality is that like the 101's the one everyone wants because the sequencer is so easy and useful and like just so much a part of what makes it its own instrument.
I was gonna bring up a Paul Birkin track, who was Midwest drop bass and communique affiliated, Midwest acid stalwart, who famously made acid with no 303, and the 202 was like a huge part of his sound. I assume that he used a 101 as well, almost definitely did, but the Paul Birkin is a good example of the sound of one acid without a 303, 2 the sound of the 202. So yeah, that's I just wanted to nod there.
Another good person for a sound of acid without a 303 is Adam TM, who said he has never owned a 303, even though he's made so many acid. He says it's all Zoxbox.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah.
I mean, it's the 303 clone, but still it's
right.
But still it's pretty funny. I mean, he was making music during the heyday of all that stuff, so he would have
would have
been all 303. But
yeah, I mean, I guess like that is funny because he didn't start doing acid records until like 2003 or something. So
I think so. Yeah,
all the earlier stuff, at least that I'm thinking of offhand, is not 303.
A lot of that, yeah, and a lot of that stuff definitely. I think I was thinking earlier today. I was trying to think because one sound of the 101 that I didn't really find a good example of, but I know is there in my head is the kind of like, Adam TM like fax kind of ambient techno kind of thing that was big that you would see on labels like Trezor and Adam TM's label and fax like that kind of wing has a lot of like 101 kind of like
Totally
noodling going on. That's like another big sound.
On that note, like when we were talking about Aphex briefly, like between ourselves earlier today, I was thinking like you said how like, well, not really a big Aphex Twin fan, and very much the same for me. For me, B12 is like the IDM, like early UK IDM go-to for me. And B12 definitely has a lot of 101 on their stuff.
Yeah. And we're not talking about Boards of Canada. I was the first person to be a Boards of Canada hater.
No, you were not, Chris. I was hating them in 1997. But yeah.
Well, I was the most influential Boards of Canada hater. No, I mean, they have good stuff. I don't want to make too shit on them too much. But if you just kind of like look around generally for like famous 101 tracks, a lot of them are Boards of Canada
for sure.
Things which are and those are fun. I'm not one to hate on a good SH-101 riff.
For sure. I mean, yeah, I'm not a huge Boards of Canada fan, but I would not deny that they have some genuinely great moments.
It would definitely be in the Instagram DMs. So I'm getting in front of the flood of Instagram DMs we get.
That's right.
Of how could you not mention these Boards of Canada tracks?
Good call.
The next track I do want to mention is Robert Hood's Museum. Nation. That record is fucking all SH-101. Obviously, there's the track on there called SH-101, but the one that's always been in my heart has been Museum, which is also just a 101
Museum's the
workout.
Yeah.
But I came across Minimal Nation. It got reissued in like 2009, I think, which was just kind of like right when that was my first like real encounter with it, buying it and just kind of like playing that thing to death. And it was also interesting to come at a time when I think in 2009 or 2010, I bought my first piece of gear, the TR-606. And I was kind of like, I'd been into music for a long time, but I was kind of like, okay, like, let me actually I was starting to really get interested in how it was all made. And getting into Minimal Nation, obviously like the music is so simple and it's obvious, he's using a 909 and a 101 on like most of the tracks.
It's all just 909, 101 and Alpha Juno too, is that right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, something
and
like
then
that.
I mean he must have been using something to sequence the Alpha Juno, but
yeah, or just it probably would have been sequencing it or playing it. I don't know. I mean
there definitely are Juno sequences on it. So maybe Elisa's HR16 would be one. I know I've heard that Robert Hood used the SAM sequencer. Do you know that one? SAM, I think it is.
I don't know it very well.
This is one of those like possibly dubious like bits of information I've received from like the like elder rave cognoscenti. So take with a grain of salt.
I mean that's a cool thing, right? At the time,
SAM 16 sequencer, I think it's called.
I mean it rings a bell, but I don't know. As far as Rob Hood goes, I don't know any specifics. But it's one of those fun things where, like, at the time that was kind of how it was, like, kind of like word of mouth, like, oh, I heard he uses this,
Yeah.
But for me, in 2009, it was a very different thing. There was the internet, and I would, I was like, oh, like, how do you make this music? Like, there's a track title called SH-101. Okay, this definitely has the SH-101. Great. That's like an awesome starting place for me to understand what that is, what that synthesizer is, what it does, how it works.
Yeah.
And that kind of like really got me into, I didn't have a 101 around or anything, but I had my 606 and I could kind of like get an idea of some of like, oh, okay, like these trigger outputs, that's what goes to like trigger the sequencer. Oh, okay, interesting. And then I think so like that whole record, Minimal Nation, was just like a big thing personally for me in terms of like, oh, okay, like understanding how much you can wring out of very, very,
couple pieces of gear.
Just a couple pieces of gear and just like jamming them and working them. And, for Museum, it just also has that like very classic, I hesitate, but I'm going to use the word slinky again. It's slinky in a Rob Hood way, so it's not like, but the way the notes kind of like glide one to the next, that could be from just like slight portamento or something, but it just, the way the sequence is like, this constantly rising sequence and, just very basic, but like the way the notes move and just the way the whole sequence, it's just the motion of it is so addictive and so incredible. And like
Rob Hood, like more than anyone, has like this that like this very subtle mastery of like making things feel off grid, but still like so groovy.
Yeah, totally.
Like no one else can do that. It's just like, like not even Mills has the same like touch of like that specific like weird funk.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. It's just like it's totally his own thing.
Yeah, and it is also like you just hear it and you're like, that's Hood.
Yeah, you hear you're like that's Hood, and then you're also like that's also an SH-101.
well, in like, Minimal Nation, yeah.
In Minimal Nation, because Minimal Nation is just like those are all. I mean, it's like the coolest thing. It's because like you're like, did he make this in like an afternoon and just like jam out these fucking tracks with like the same setup and like he like set it up, like jammed out these tracks over a couple days and then like broke it down because it has that very cohesive feel
and immediate. Yeah,
totally immediate. Like no like just jams. Like no, I don't know. Like no like. I mean, he may have edited stuff after the fact, probably did, but like it just feels like super just immediate and raw and like straight from like his fucking living room to your head.
I know the reissue of Minimal Nation from a few years ago. There's one from maybe like 2019 or 20 or something like that.
I think he did reissue it again. Yeah.
Yeah. That one has some unreleased demo or alternate versions.
I didn't know that. I should check that out.
Yeah. They're cool.
Yeah. That's a great record.
We could spend a whole episode talking about Robert Hood, certainly.
Yeah.
Like also like by Internal Empire, he stopped using the 101. Is that right?
Yeah. Well, I don't know if that's right, but I mean, definitely I was checking Internal Empire just when we were thinking about doing this for a podcast, and I was like, yep, none of this sounds at all like that. It's a very different sound.
I mean, it's possible the 101's in there somewhere in some capacity.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think in Internal Empire, he's still stuck with using the Juno too.
Probably. I mean, there's a totally different sound palette on that record.
Yeah.
And another. I mean, it's another classic.
Yeah.
One of the real classic techno albums. But
yeah. I mean,
very different sound.
A topic to dog ear for some point. Like we should do an episode just discussing the like intricacies, complexities of the techno LP and why the techno LP almost never works. But let's dog ear that one.
Yeah, let's table that because that's going to be a whole thing.
Right. That'll be another hour.
I'll just jump immediately to make sure we don't go down that. I'll just jump to another track.
Well, do we want to wrap here for the Patreon?
Oh yeah, I guess
we're about an hour in.
To hear our next picks, make sure to sign up for the Patreon. Shawn and I are going to talk about our next picks after this.
It's gonna be so deep, and like we're gonna like it's really gonna be mind blowing. So
you've never heard any of these tracks. You don't know what we're about to talk about.
The rarest of the rare.
It's not Voodoo Ray. Let me tell you that. All right.